This is GWEN Talks, where intimate conversations reveal, heal, inspire, and entertain. And now, here's your host, Tess Cacciatore.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to episode 4 of our summer series for GWEN Talks. I'm really excited about this show today because it really shows how we can get involved in our communities by empowering ourselves to help others. That's why this one is titled Civic Duty to Civil Passion. And so we have a great panel today, but I do want to take time to honor John Lewis, who passed away recently, and give a quote of something that really means something to all of us, and especially to me. If you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. I think that's more relevant now than any time in our world, that when we see something in our lives, even within our families, let's sit down and talk about it, have communication around it, and see what we can do to heal. One of the things that we're really passionate about at GWEN is sex trafficking and human trafficking. It's happening in our own backyards on a daily basis. I just had a conversation this morning with one of my dear colleagues, and he lives in the Vegas, Nevada area. And he noticed outside his window and in his neighborhood, he's very observant, and he noticed different kinds of trucks and vans, and even poised as Christian community leaders with Christ Church emblems on the trucks that were found to be trafficking children and humans. Right now in our communities, we have a right to be able to report these to authorities and make sure that our children and our people and our communities are protected. It's a global pandemic, an epidemic. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that needs to be closed down. And I know a lot of people behind the scenes are doing things to do this, but I just want to offer this invitation to us all to really be mindful of what's happening in our communities. Over 300,000 children on an annual basis from the United States alone are abducted into human and sex trafficking. And that is something that is just recorded. We're not talking about the children that are born within slavery. We're not talking about the children that are lost in foster care system. We're not talking about the people that are runaways. There's so many things that we can offer to help in our communities with regard to this topic. And we're going to unfold these beautiful people that I brought together, that I'm honored to know, that are doing things in their own communities and on a global scale, that I hope will inspire you to get involved and get inspired to do something great in your life. So I want to first introduce John Erickson. He's been a longtime dear friend of mine, and what I love about him is that he started from a very early age being mentored by his mother and grandmother, and he's a self-proclaimed feminist, and I love that about him. He went to college studying women's studies. He got a degree in women's studies. He's a very big activist, and he's also running right now for City Council in West Hollywood, California. We also have Erika McCall, who I met through Fonda Whitehead. I have to give a great big shout out to her because we do a lot of work with Hope Gardens, which is in Sylmar. It's owned by Union Rescue Mission, and what they do to serve our communities with regard to homeless women and children is phenomenal. And she introduced me to Erika. I'm so excited about having her on today, but also developing a future relationship with her of all the things she does in her community. She has a book and an organization called Go For Yours, which is about young people to have the courage to follow their dreams. So I love that because there's so many things that we can do to inspire our young people of today. She has a graduate degree for higher education, a university professor, and assistant director for diversity and leadership development. Then we have, I'm going to use a little swear word, badass Valerie Jackson, because she is a female firefighter. When Michael told me about her, I said, we have to have her on. What better way to display civic action to civil passion with regard to being a female firefighter. So we're going to dig into what it was like to be a female firefighter. And also she has a huge background of things of being in service in her community. She lives in Memphis. And she belonged to an organization called Yo Memphis, which was about a state-run program that helped youth ages 14 to 21 in schools and kids that had dropped out of school. And the things that they did with getting their GEDs, driver's license, helping them find their careers. So she had this multi-dimensional career of doing all kinds of wonderful things. And as well, she's she'll tell you all about herself. She's fabulous. And last but not least, my dear longtime friend, Michael Dyer, who we're going to talk about his book called Woke. He also, I'm not sure if we even talked about this in the pre-show talking, but he has this really great card game for relationships. And we are highlighting that in our series, which is an original scripted series that I'm one of the co-creators on, called My Sweet Life. He's our lead actor of the female lead. He plays her ex-husband, and what happens in the series, you'll be seeing soon. We got kind of closed down because of the pandemic. We hope to be back to production soon so we can unveil Michael Dyer playing Maxwell Turner. So anyway, without further ado, I want to be able to talk to Michael now, because what he does as an experiential facilitator and coach and author, he's about growing up and gaining your identity. So Michael, hello.
Hello. How you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on here and to be the guest co-host. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, and I've been able to be on set with you, and you're a dream to direct because you come so ready, willing, and able, and just a beautiful charisma you have, and your card game, which I hinted at, which you can talk about as well. But let's talk about your work as an experiential facilitator, because you go in and work with young juvenile boys and girls to help them in times of need. So can you talk a little bit about that? And then we're going to back into the woke conversation too.
Yeah, for me, my life experience sort of pulled me to want to help others, because I looked at my life growing up without a mother and a father, growing up in poverty, and I recognized that I could have been those kids locked up right now. I could have been that kid. For some reason, I believe my grandmother, if it wasn't for her, I would be them. And so my thing is that here's a woman, and I think it's perfect for me because my mom and dad wasn't there, but here was a woman that took me in that didn't have to, love me unconditionally. And so for me, she represents what I should do in the world. Take somebody in, teach someone something. And so when I go into the juvenile halls, my job is not to change those guys or kids, but to help them to remember who they are. No one's bad. This world conditions us to be who we are. So my job is to just remind them who they are. So that's what I do. And I do it in a way, what I call experiential. So instead of just talking to them about it, I try to make it either a game or some type of way that they can embody it. Because me growing up as being dyslexic, I learned better when I was doing something hands-on. So I try to create an environment where they get a chance to experience what love is like, experience integrity, experience what it feels to love yourself, which is just talking about love yourself and all that. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, because we work in our workshops about discovering what our blueprint is. What were we given when we were born? Because we hear when we're in the womb, were our parents peaceful and happy? Were they fighting? The blueprint that we have growing up of what our siblings, our grandparents, our family does, it really makes an impact. So the fact that you go in there and do these experiential things is so important for them to be able to shift that. Can you give an example of what an experiential game would be like?
Well, let's say, for example, I work with a company, it's called Spirit Awakening, and we do a lot of creative writing. So one of the exercises, who am I? So who am I? First, we have the kids to look at not who the world say you are, not what your environment, whatever it say you are, but who are you past the labels? And so we have the young men or young women do that, to write. First, we put it on paper. And then I may have them to create what I call an affirmation. It might be, I am an intuitive, powerful, loving leader. And I have them to sit there, and I have them to sit across from someone. And I have them to look at that person's eyes and say that. And after that, I have them to visualize them being a creative, loving leader. So what they're doing now, they're taking their imagination, which if you see it in your mind and visualizing mind, then you can create it on the physical levels. And I talked to them about the fact is that everything we see in the world started with a thought. The car you drive started with someone's thought. The house you live in started with a thought. So what happened is that once they understand that, wow, everything around me started to start, so the blueprint is inside of me. Now I'm able to know that the source of all my creation starts with who? With me. And so I have them to practice just being present, visualizing themselves. What does it feel like? So they embody the visual, they embody what it feels like to be standing in your brand new house, and the wind is coming out through the window, and you can smell your mom or somebody cooking a meal, and you can smell it. So what it is, you're embodying it, and the mind doesn't know the difference between what's out in the physical world and what's in the inside. So the mind's like, oh, this is really happening. So this is experiential. They're now embodying it, they feel it, they can taste it. It's a beautiful experience.
Thoughts are so powerful because they do create a new reality. They create new potential and new platforms of being able to succeed in life. So tell me how that works in with your book, Woke.
Yeah, Woke. All right. I wrote this book called
love the
Woke.
title. Look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. It says, change your perception, change yourself, change your life. And the reason I said change your perception, because first you need to change the way you see yourself, the story you're telling yourself. And then as you begin to do that, you begin to change yourself. And as you change yourself, then you change your life. So it works in that order. And so my book talks about my life growing up and all the challenges that I went through, and how I had suicidal tendencies, how, it was just, read the book. I can't go into the whole thing, but it talks about that and how I made it out. How I made it out with the help of spiritual God, just be honest. And how I was able to tap into that potential, tap into that resource.
We're going to have the links to all the authors' books in the YouTube channel below. So please click on these links and go to Amazon and buy these books to support these authors. I love what you're doing and how you are working with such an important sector of our society, which is the displaced and people in juvie, because they have so many options. And they chose ways that got them into trouble that they might not have had to do. So I love what you're doing, and I'm really excited about that. I do want to move over, speaking of inspirations in our community, and I have to do a shout out because it was a conversation with John at the very beginning of this springtime that I said, I want to support your campaign. I don't live in West Hollywood, but I'm going to get people I know behind you, and I want to do whatever I can. So we talked about doing a Zoom conversation, and then this great panel formed, and it was the weekend of Father's Day, and then Father's Day topic was so imperative for them to have these healing conversations. So we had to go back to John and say, hey, can we reschedule this a little bit? And he was so flexible and beautiful, but it was really about his conversation that launched me putting together this 4-part series. And if you haven't seen them yet, Father Figures, Youth Speak Out, and the Silence of Freedom, go and watch that. That's the July 4th one. So John, so excited to finally, after all these months, thank you for the patience and for your beautiful campaign manager, Austin, and a special shout out he did, Lindsay Horvath. I always get her because it's a tongue twister. He was also very important in Lindsay Horvath's campaign for mayor as well. So shout out to Austin. Hello, I love you.
Hi, Tess. It's so good to be here with you. I'm so glad. I'm so thankful for this series you put together. I do watch them. I thought the Father's Day one was truly inspirational. Everything that when we spoke on the phone, what it was hoping to be. I'm so honored to be here with other incredible leaders, Valerie, Michael, Erika. I mean, if we use the words kick-ass a lot in this forum, it's going to be too little, because we've got some people on here that are changing the world. It's just truly an honor to always be with people who use their drive for public service, their drive to change, to bring good in the world. And that's why I'm running for West Hollywood City Council.
Tell us about your vision. I want to hear everything. I've been on your calls, but I want you to share with everybody.
Yes, West Hollywood deserves progressive leadership that's really looking at not only how we're dealing with COVID-19, but also how we're looking at what our vision for 2022, 2024, or even the future looks like. When I start thinking about the city of West Hollywood, I not only look at myself as the only young Democrat in the race. West Hollywood is 50% below the age of 40. I'm proudly 34, so I'm still a young Democrat for another year and a half before I officially term out on that term. But ultimately, what we're looking for in terms of leadership is people that are going to work every single day to not only bring about real change for our city, but people that are going to work tirelessly to help renters who are scared that they're going to be evicted from their apartments, to help people dealing with issues of food insecurity, poverty, issues such as homelessness that are just the crisis of our times aside with what's going on with COVID-19. We need leaders with real solutions, regional connections, and the ability to think broadly, but really act locally with how we bring about this change. I know I'm ready to do that from a number of the positions I've held and am so proud to be a part of. From the people that are endorsing me to the people that are really stepping up and being there every single day for the campaign. It's time to get to the voters. It's time to start talking to them about this vision. It's time to raise more money, as the horrible thing in politics is always what it is. But ultimately, it's time for what we really look like in terms of the future. And I'm proud to be a part of that future. Throw your hat in the ring. And like in our little pre-chat yesterday, Erika said something that stuck with me. It's, we've been telling people to do things for years, telling people to go out there and make a change, start a nonprofit, write a book, really get active. And I've been telling people to run for office for many years. When it comes to LGBTQ candidates, women candidates, you have to tell people multiple times to run for office. But ultimately, like with Erika and all the work she's doing and everyone here, I decided to do it and jump into the ring. And we can't wait for change. We can't wait for people to be the leaders that we want. And that's why I'm running in many ways.
That's wonderful. Michael, I know you had a question that you wanted to ask him too.
So John, first, thank you for running and stepping up. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of love. And I'm just curious, how are you dealing with COVID?
Yeah, so COVID-19 is the question and the topic of every conversation that comes up. We've had to change the entire campaign as a result of it because people do not want you coming to their doors and doing the traditional campaigning. But as Karen Bass said on a call a few weeks ago, that when we win the White House in November and when we take over this change, of course, there's going to be priorities and issues that we've wanted to talk about and really bring about for many years. But the thing that's on her mind and her brain as a part of that new Congress will be COVID, and more COVID, because we've had a leader that hasn't addressed it. We've had a country and world that is suffering. And we ultimately need to look at how we as local leaders are dealing with this. So in West Hollywood, that's things such as continuing and re-examining our eviction moratorium. We've extended it to the end of September, when other cities have it happening this August and ending. And so people are scared. They don't have rent if they haven't worked for several months. West Hollywood is home to a huge service-based industry. So ultimately, then how are we getting our business community back? West Hollywood seems to always be able to jump ahead of the curve a little bit and try to think innovatively and out the box. And this cafe culture, these people dining on the sidewalks, moving in and really adapting as the best of us, is the reason why West Hollywood survived, and like so many other creative cities. But we really need to start looking at how our business community, which brings in tax, which then allows us to fund social service programs, which allows us to do the type of work that we need to do, or getting back to work. That's working with our Chamber of Commerce. But then ultimately, it's the bigger issues we can't be afraid to talk about, from housing, affordable housing and homelessness, to traffic, to development, to issues on how we make sure our grantees are diverse and how we're dealing with issues such as public safety in the city. That is topics of the day, and we need to have those conversations both broadly, but also how they impact COVID. And so when it comes to what the city's dealing with COVID is that, we're doing all that we can. We need to do more. We need to also be making sure, looking at how we're giving small grants to our city businesses or our city residents that we're doing now, but how can we expand that? But ultimately, when someone calls City Hall, are they getting all the work and the care and compassion that they need? And we need to do a lot more constituent services and outreach right now because people are scared. And as local leaders, they look to us because that's where most of the change and impact really happens. So we need to do a lot, but we're ready to buckle up and do it.
Being that,
thank you.
Yeah, being that I have a very strong passion also for homelessness. I was homeless at a time, and my book, Homeless to the White House, tells my whole journey, whether you want to hear it or not. It's all there. So I'm really curious about the situation of homelessness in West Hollywood and what your agenda to be city council will help that situation.
Yeah, so to keep more, when we think about Los Angeles, we call them Angelinos. So what do we call WeHo residents, WeHoians, or whatever we look at it. But when we look at our fellow residents, we're in this moment, we need to address both the short-term and long-term needs. I look at this in two steps. We're looking at extending the means of the eviction moratoriums because people don't have access to a job or even to pay rent, and then how they pay back rent is critical because we need to make sure they're not being evicted. But then working within our city budgets across the country to provide funding for rent vouchers and other mechanisms to keep folks who can't pay their rents in their homes to avoid increasing the number of people experiencing homelessness. Right now, as we know, there are local cities that aren't getting money from the CARES Act, but residents directly need that. And so advocating for the federal government to do more. As we all know, the federal government's a little bit of a mess, and that's a nice way to say it at the current moment, but we need to start really advocating for that. But then ultimately it comes down to solving our truly systematic, horribly, put together right now housing crisis. And that's increasing our zoning capacity in thoughtful areas near transit and job centers. That's supporting inclusionary housing at all aspects of what we do to ensure our neighborhoods are diverse, as well as our economies. Reducing trips and how all that works into traffic and environmental justice are key. But we really need to start looking at a lot of ways that our housing crisis is just another part of the homeless crisis. And then ultimately, where is this when we think about it intersectionally through all different lenses? And so when it comes to looking at the 70% of people in Los Angeles County right now experiencing homelessness, what are we doing every day to make sure that they're getting into services? It goes down to mental health. It goes down to healthcare in general. And so we need to be working as a city to address these systemic cracks in the system that COVID has ripped open. And if there's anything that we know now, it's that COVID didn't create these cracks, it's that these cracks were already there. And so ultimately, we need to work as a city to heal those cracks. And that comes down to the ways in which we're looking at not only how we address this regionally with our county, because the city of Los Angeles, the city of West Hollywood works with the county of Los Angeles outside. We don't with how we are put together, but ultimately how we're dealing with it locally. And as a big proponent and as a planning commissioner as well on the city of West Hollywood's planning commission, I look at housing. How are we creating more housing that's actually affordable? Because there's a difference between affordable housing and housing that's affordable. But ultimately what we're doing as a result to create that housing. And, we need to do more. We're not doing enough right now. But ultimately, we need leaders that are going to think big and, take some hits when some neighborhood members come out and they say they don't want an affordable housing project next to their house for, as many of you on this call are shaking your heads, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But we need to be brave and think about what that actually means and what that means to bringing about and addressing homelessness. So those are just a few of those things. And I could talk about housing policy all day, but we have too many great people on this panel to take up that time.
John, can I ask a question? In Memphis, we are doing a lot of food banks. So in California, are they doing a lot of food banks because of COVID and stuff, and a lot of children being, out of school. The school system, they have a lot of prepared lunch menus and stuff, so families can go get food for the school age kids, and then they have food boxes that's going through the food banks, so that the families can come and line up, and they're putting the food in their boxes and stuff. I actually had COVID in March, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you got it because you were handing out boxes and stuff." And I'm just like, "Hey, that COVID thing, it comes and hits when it wants to and how it wants to." Believe me, I was sick 2 months, the whole hospital stay, double pneumonia. But I want to tell you that for Memphis, the food boxes, the food pantries have helped out, I know, tremendously with families that are in need because they're not working, the unemployment issues and stuff. And just, I know I've gone out, even now that I'm healed from COVID, I still have gone and gotten food boxes for people and taken them and dispersed them and different things. So are they doing that in California?
Yeah, so actually, we look at our Los Angeles Unified School District. It actually, because of the work that I was doing to hand out lunches to students and ultimately parents and their families, they became one of the largest food providers in the country as a result. I mean, Los Angeles Unified is the second largest school district in the country outside of New York. And it, as a result, when it turned over and it was starting to provide free lunches and food for their students, ultimately they were feeding families. They were feeding everyone else as a result. And so food pantries are critical. When COVID started, a lot of people were scared to leave their homes or go to food pantries or go outside. But so how do we deliver food? An incredible organization out here in Los Angeles called Project Angel Food. They were out there delivering food to residents throughout the county, throughout the city, who are in need and who needed stuff, and then they were expanding their services and what they were doing. And then when we look at our Sova food pantry that was here in the surrounding area of West Hollywood, they were shut down for a time, but then, we had to increase, and we needed to look at how we increased the money we provided to them so they could start back up and ultimately start providing the food back to people. There's a level of shame and stigma that comes along with people, accepting food.
I had a lady say, "Well, can I drive up in my Mercedes?" I said, "Honey, it's not about your car you drive, because who cares? If you need, you need. It doesn't matter what you drive. Who knows how you even got that vehicle? Somebody could have given it to you. That doesn't mean that that's where your status is because you drive a Mercedes or you have this kind of car. If you're in need, you're in need. And you could be picking it up for an elderly person who doesn't have a car at all, but needs those produce and whatever they're given. I know in Memphis, it's just a drive-through line. A lot of the community centers, they have them set up by the different area codes or zip codes and stuff. And so you just drive up, you get in line, and you open up your trunks of the car, and you get what they're giving out for the day, But it's not about status at this point. It's about really helping and coming together.
Yeah, Tess mentioned my grandmother. I'm from a little town called Ripon, Wisconsin, and I learned about public service really early on by actually helping my grandmother in Ripon's community food pantry. I was with her all day, every day. She was my best friend. I miss her horribly. And she would pick me up from school, and we'd go to the food pantry, and we would help people who would come in and need food. I would help put boxes together and get them ready for people as they would come out. And my grandmother knew every single member of the community, every single person.
Isn't it amazing when if you've never helped out doing a food project, when you leave there, you're just like, wow. The people, the gratitude when they tell you thank you, and you can see it in people's faces that it's like, that's what I needed. I truly needed this, and they got the children in the car or elderly person and stuff. And it's just some of the stories, and they're just like waving and telling you thank you. And that brings tears to your eyes because it's a blessing to be able to be in service at this time. I had never done it before. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah, and I learned so much. I mean, my grandmother always taught me that, she grew up during the Depression, and she joined the Women's Auxiliary Corps right after Pearl Harbor, left her job making gloves in Ripon, joined the Army the next day. Literally, I mean, she would always tell me that she wouldn't have enough to eat, and that at the end of the day, she would give her own last can of food to help someone or whatever she would do. It was seniors. And then ultimately, I will never forget this moment as I came out and I saw people from my grade, because it was a small town, and I would see people that I would go to school with every day that I never assumed with, when we have these assumptions about who or how our communities are, and people were struggling and people needed help, and being able to provide that help was something that my grandmother always taught me. And it was something that I try to embody. I love a good canned food drive. I mean, I will be very honest, it's the easiest type of activism we could do to help at any given point. And the work that we do at Silva, the work that we need to do as leaders, both to provide that funding or to make sure that we're getting people enough food. I mean, the top 3 reasons why people are calling City Hall right now is rental assistance, because they're afraid of being kicked out of their apartments, food insecurity, and then issues around public safety. And when you think about down to like the core of really when things get rough, like when we really start thinking about our core needs, those are it: house over our head, food in our mouths, and how we can make sure we go on living when we start looking at issues such as police brutality and all the issues that have been coming up around that, much needed conversations, or how people are starting to notice things in their neighborhood that are, a tree's not cut or a light's not up, and they want to have it fixed because they're finally home. I mean, the ways in which we're getting back down to basics now is really interesting as leaders.
I think the pandemic, in a way, has created a lot of blessings inside of the curse, so to speak, because people are really stepping up and hoping that they get out of that fear mode so they can really start stepping in. And I've seen so many people doing like kindness and food drives and all kinds of stuff. So I love what you all are doing. I do know that there was this truck in Arizona that was giving out like 30 tons of food over a 5-day period last weekend that we were doing a lot of social media on. So it's happening across the country. So I encourage listeners not to, be wise, do whatever you need to do for your protocol, but be not in fear. Let's just stay together as a community. And so I want to flip back over to Valerie down in Memphis and talk about, what was it like? I know you have such a broad breadth of experience. Like I could talk to John for 3 hours just about his women's studies and women activism and, the women marches that I've seen him on and all that kind of stuff. You have so much to do, but I think the first question I want to ask you, to inspire other young girls that might want to be a firefighter, what was it like to be a woman in that industry? And what did you have to battle?
Well, the first battle is making sure the men realize that you're not their girlfriend, you're not their wives, and you're not their mothers. And that you're an equal counterpart. You did just as many, I had to do just as many push-ups or pull-ups. It wasn't, the women had to do 5, the men got to do 10. I didn't get to pull the 150-pound dummy and they had to. No, I did the exact same thing that every male on the job. In our department, it's like 1,800 total, and it's less than 50 women on the job. So when I came on, our class was the biggest group of females. So it was 12 females, and that was by far the largest. Most of the time, it's usually like one female in a class of maybe 40, 50, 60 men. So we were blessed enough to have 12 women to kind of gripe about and to go through the motions and stuff, because you think about it, if you're out on a fire scene, okay, and what if you really have to go to the bathroom? Well, men can just go to the bathroom. Well, for us women, it's like, chief, I really gotta go. And so the chief has to drive you somewhere if you cannot. It's a lot. It's very different. A lot of people think that if you become a female firefighter, that you have to be one of the fellas, and it's like, no, you still can be girly girl. I'm still girly girl. I used to get my nails done all the time. I used to break them all the time. So I was like, okay, You still can wear your makeup and different things and stuff. My guys used to always tell me, Jackson, did you go get your hair done? Because every time I would go get my hair done, we always had a fire. So they was like, I need you to keep your hair braided and not to have a fire. But a lot of times when I would get on the scene, they said, I've never seen you on a firefighter. Are you a firefighter? I was like, yeah. And then when I got promoted to driving the truck, they really looked, they were like, wait, that's a female driving that truck. Are you really driving that big thing? It's like, yeah, I can drive the truck. I can drive the pumper. And the truck is the long one with the ladders on top of it. And the pumper is the one who actually carries the water to the fire. And so to see a female driving, they're just like, oh, you can do that too? Then I got promoted to be a lieutenant. Now that was another whole thing, because then I'm over anywhere from 4 to 6 or to a whole station over 10 guys. And so to let them know that I'm here in charge, I'm not, again, your mother, I'm not your girlfriend, I'm not nagging. That's the big thing. Oh, you're no, sir, there's called rules and regulations, and that we all have to go by, and that's what we're doing here today. I'm not nagging you. This is just what we have to do and stuff. So to get them to understand that part of it, and to see that, I am your equal and I am now your superior was probably like the biggest challenge and stuff. But Memphis does have a female director. So that kind of changed some things and stuff. And then when you get to a fire and stuff, for women intuition, you see the little things, like you notice in a fire that this mug was probably all that's left out of a burning house. Because when a house burns, you can't tell anything from anything. So a woman will go in and get that picture of grandma, and that's their last picture, and bring it out to the family. That's tears, and that's something that no matter how much insurance you have, can't replace that picture of grandma that before the other guys just spray water and destroy everything. It's like, hold up, guys, wait. Let's see what's left of this burn to bring out in reserve, because a lot of times, too, people don't have insurance. They're living in like a family home that grandma and somebody else left, and they don't have the deeds, they don't have this and that and stuff. And so to be able to preserve something from a fire that no matter how much insurance you have, it can't replace a picture of your grandmother or that special trophy or some china, before, because that water destroys everything. The smoke destroys everything. So if you can go in, I had people to ask me, well, can you go see if this burned, or can you see my glasses in there and stuff? And when you go back in and get those things out, or their keys, because they can't afford to get a locksmith to come out to rekey their car, because again, they don't have insurance, especially in apartment fires. We made an apartment fire, and it started at one corner unit, and it burned out 10 families. So that's another whole thing, that one person, because of their carelessness, burn out the whole family, where the people on the end, maybe they had smoke detectors and they had fire extinguishers and stuff, but the person that started the fire, and not that they did it, they were just negligent, maybe fell asleep with food on the stove. That's, most fires happen with food on the stove, or either electrical. For them to burn out everybody, it gets to be devastating. And most people don't have renter's insurance. And it's like, you got 10 flat screen TVs, and you have all the latest designer, this and that, and you didn't buy insurance. You need insurance, because you don't own that piece of property. Renter's insurance, even if you're living in a home or an apartment, you need renter's insurance, and most people don't have that. So, but it's fun though. It's a never-ending thing. Yeah.
I want to ask you something. What advice would you have for young ladies that, because it's such a male-dominant, career? What advice would you have for a young lady if she wants to approach something like that?
I would tell them to get in shape, to make sure they have a given heart. You can't be squeamish, because we see a lot of people, what do you see? They think that it's just fire. I thought I was just fighting fire. For people in Memphis, in most areas, we're first responders. So we're first there on the accident scene. We're first there for medical emergencies and stuff. And you see people at their most vulnerable moment, be it if they've had an accident on themselves, just all kind of different situations and stuff. And so you not only become just that firefighter, they need hugs, they're screaming and crying, and some of them cry out and tell you all of these things. Like I had a young man who got shot. He was in a gang. And so, ma'am, am I going to die? And then so you get a chance to really minister a lot of times, or talk to young people or older people too about certain things in their lives and stuff. It's like, so, but when you had your colors, you thought you were willing to die for that until you got shot. And now there's a possibility that you might not make it to the hospital. And so you get to tell people, their loved ones, that they said to tell my mom I love you, or to tell this person I love you, or it's amazing. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. You have to be really prepared to be able to hold and to have compassion. If you don't have compassion, that might not be the thing that you want to see, or you're kind of squeamish about blood. You might not want to do it, but it's a wonderful career. I didn't realize how much I was going to have to give of myself, because I found myself going back to accident scenes, or back to people's homes to see what happened to that person, or checking back at the hospital, or you see people who don't have, and then you find yourself buying clothes for somebody, or giving back, or trying to give them to put them with an organization that can help them in different things. But now, not everybody does that, but that was me. It's a very rewarding. You see people, and it's like, oh, you were on the scene, and I'm like, I was. I was like, okay, well, what happened? Because no day is the same. Well, what happened? Oh, my loved one, they passed away. And so, but I thank you that you were so kind and that you went the extra mile. You got my cell phone, because I've gotten to scenes and I find a person's cell phone, and I try to call the last person that they call, or try to find, because somebody's looking for their loved one to make it to their destination, maybe, that they never made it to. So where do they start finding out where is that person?
This gives true meaning to civic duty, to civil passion, to have passion and compassion in that line of work. If you're a front responder, is really important. So I thank you for the work that you're doing. And I know you said yesterday that you were a substitute teacher as well, and that you wove in the stories of, these are things to be aware from your home. So tell us a little bit about how you encouraged your students to be mindful and not have negligence in the home to create unnecessary fires.
So when I'm at school, I usually start off my day, because they're substitute teachers. It's like, oh, you're not my real teacher. So they're already transformation, as I call it. I said, now I know as a parent, I said, tell them first, I'm a parent first, and then I'm a firefighter, and then I'm your teacher. So as a parent, I know that we didn't send you to school to disrespect somebody. So let's start out. So I would tell them about the stories, and you would see the room just kind of quiet down. And I tell them about the accidents, and you need to wear your seatbelts, because if you don't, your body is a projectile, and it'll be across the highway somewhere if you don't wear your seatbelts. And the importance of unplugging and not over having too many things plugged into outlet and different things like that. And so when I would see my kids at the grocery store sometimes, because in Memphis, we have to go to the grocery store to get our food, because people think that the city pays for our food, pays for our internet, pays for our newspaper, but we don't. So we have to buy that, and then we divide the bill. That's another whole story. But when I would see my kids out there, it's like, oh, she really is a firefighter. Or I see them in that vulnerable state when their loved one has died, or their grandmother is sick, and I'm like, well, babe, where's your grandmother's list of medicine and stuff? And so I would tell them, make sure you have a list of if you go spend the weekend with your grandmother, make sure you know all your grandmother's medicine in case she gets sick. And you have to call 911. Don't call everybody else. Call 911 to get us started, and then call your mom who's maybe at work. So that minutes, they matter a lot of times. So when I would see my kids in vulnerable times like that, it's like, oh, it's somebody that I know that can truly help them. And I know, Michael, you talked about your juvenile program. I work with a program also called Juvenile Intervention Faith-Based. It's called GIF. And so in Memphis, if they go through this program, they can get their records expunged. So I like that idea. I'm going to have to take that back and get them to write it down, because a lot of times, even in my substitute teaching, and they would say, oh, that kid is bad, and that one. A lot of times it's just about they want attention. So once you give them that attention, they're okay. Everything that you said that they were bad and that they were doing, it's all about attention. It's not that they want to do that, or there is a lack thereof, and that's why they might have stolen something. Why are they stealing, or why are they acting out and stuff? You have to get down to the root of that before you can even teach somebody 2 + 2 is 4, because they're not hearing it because they hadn't seen their mom in 3 days, or they don't have any food. So you're thinking they're stealing. Well, they're hungry and their little brothers and sisters haven't eaten. So you find all of those things out, and then when they see that you genuinely help, that you genuinely care about you. And they used to call me Miss C. So they said, oh, Miss C, no, Miss C, good. And if anybody tried to ever disrespect me, they would say, oh no, not that one. So my kids would jump in and be like, oh no, Miss C care about you. Miss C, I tell you the real truth about whatever and stuff. And then to see them later on in life and see them at the store later, and it's like, hey, Miss C, I did this and that, you told me this, and yeah, Miss C, you were right about this or that and stuff. And when you can just stop, and it just, because a teacher role is, they got all of these things that they have to fulfill. So for that one day, if I could tell them something about emergency situations, how to handle that, if I could speak life into telling them that everybody can't go to college, but wherever you are, maybe it's a trade school that you need to do. Be true to yourself. Don't get caught up in all of these things that you can't do anything with. It makes everything just calm down for a second, and to make them think. If I could just get them to think outside of just what you see right now, because what you do right now is going to affect you later in life. Mm-hmm. If you could just slow down and just think. So if somebody gave you $1 million, what you do with it? You don't know what to do with $1 million or $100,000. If you had this big home, if you had this fancy car, what would you do with it and stuff? And so if we could just all get our kids to think about, I tell them, think worst case scenario and think if it was easy. So if worst case scenario, if that's going to put you in jail, if it's going to do this, okay. And then if it goes smooth, where would you be and stuff? So if I could just get them to think, I'm okay.
Miss C, I just want to say from Miss C real quick. Miss C, that's powerful. And for you, it seems like it's so natural, though. It seems like it's just innate for you. Because I remember when my brother got COVID, you're the first person I called because I know you survived. And I just didn't trust. I said, what did you do? What did you do? And I was in tears, and you guided me through it. You were so calm. So I just want to say, you are a gift to the world. I mean, you are. And so
thank you.
It's just natural for you. Thank you.
Let me tell you about that whole COVID thing just for a second. When it first started in March, January, they were talking about it over, because I remember being in Florida and hearing that it was coming here, the COVID thing. So by February, they were still kind of talking about. So when it hit me in March, I was like, we're not getting this. We're not getting that this is truly happening. And so when Memphis first started their first week of the pop-up clinics where you can drive through and stuff, and I got it, and I was looking crazy. So if anybody goes to my Facebook page, you'll see my pictures out there, me in the hospital and me looking crazy, because I wanted people to understand. And when I started getting messages in my inbox to tell people, Valerie, I'm really taking it serious because you have it and stuff, it made a difference and stuff. And so it always takes somebody. I'm just like, Lord, why me? Why is this my thorn that I had to bear to share with people that I didn't even think that paid me any attention, that really said, oh, it hit you? You actually have it? What did you feel like? The 103.5 fever, every symptom that they said that you could have, I had it. And it was the worst feeling in the world. When I thought that I was over everything, and then to come back with double pneumonia, one of my privates called me, and she was like, Ludy, no, I'm calling 911. She called 911 for me and sent me to the hospital, because I'm so used to skip breathing with my fire equipment. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm breathing and not realizing I had double pneumonia, and I saw it. It makes you delirious. It makes you out of your mind and stuff. But even still, I still put my pictures out there because I wanted people to realize this is happening. And so now, just like when Michael called me, I've had several people to call me, Valerie, what did I do? And what did you feel like and stuff? And I'm just like, oh, so that's why I had it, so that I could be able to tell somebody what to look for. Not that I'm a doctor or anything by means, but so that somebody could know, because people were ashamed. And I was ashamed at first, I won't admit. I was like, do I tell anybody that I have it? You know, are they going to treat me like I have AIDS or something that they can't get rid of? And I said, Lord said, no, you have to tell everybody so that people can be aware and know that it is out there and that they do need to take these precautions. So
I love that you're such a role model for all things. I'm going to go back to the topic of youth, and then we're going to circle back around to John and Michael about youth programs and things. But I want to move over to Erika, who's been waiting patiently around this whole conversation, because when Valerie started talking about the youth, it inspired me, because it's so important in our opinion, as far as GWEN, and my opinion is that if we can start really young and teaching kids different ways of thinking, it could heal them and break the cycles of abuse that happen to trickle down throughout their family and in their communities. So I'm going to talk about Go For Yours and the fact that you are working with young people to follow their dreams, and you have an organization and you authored the book Go For Yours. So tell us about why youth inspired you out of all the things you could do in the world with civic passion, etc.
Well, youth, like just working with the youth has always been a passion of mine. As I shared with you all yesterday, I started in social work when I was fresh out of college. I was a foster care caseworker, and I was working with families that weren't really working to get their children back in the home. And so that I found that very discouraging, just as a young person fresh out of college. But I had a young client that I worked with that was 18. She was in foster care, but she was headed to college, and I did a college tour for her. And I saw how much that impacted her. So I went back to grad school and then got a degree in higher education. And while there, was just working with students, you know, after grad school, was working at St. Xavier University in Chicago. It's a private college. And then I got the idea for Go For Yours. And almost 10 years ago, actually, I got the idea for Go For Yours. And the whole purpose behind the book was just to motivate young people who naturally would not be motivated. So I was living in Chicago at the time. I was born in Chicago, raised in a small town, DeKalb, Illinois. But a lot of students I was working with in Chicago, like when you talk to them and you ask them like how they want to follow their dreams, a lot of them don't even believe that they will be alive after a certain age. And, you know, someone who can relate, because I have two cousins who were victims to, you know, violence and, you know, black on black crime. So just wanted to create something that was positive for African American youth at the time, and was just blessed to go pretty much all over the country and share this message. And as I'm inspiring young people to follow their dreams, and a lot of them are like, I want to, but how can I? Don't have these resources. And when coming back to, because I live in Los Angeles now, but when I came back to LA or to Chicago to speak to a group of students, I was asking some of the students, like, how can I help you? What are some things that you need? And there was a young lady who wanted to go to the Olympics for swimming, but she was on the swim team in high school, but she couldn't afford the additional training that it takes, because swimming is considered an elite sport. So someone who's talented, she can only go so far because of the neighborhood that she lives in. So that's not fair. So I created, through Go For Yours, created the Go For Yours Foundation, where we have a leadership development fellowship called the Dream Experience, where we work with students from all over the country and bring them to Los Angeles for a week for leadership development, entrepreneurship, and we have a civic engagement component. So the whole idea is to develop them as leaders and provide them with resources that they need so they can go back to the community and make an impact, because we can only do so much, right? There's only so much time we have in a day. So really preparing the next generation of leaders to make an impact and inspire them to make a change and use their talents to do that. So
that's amazing.
How do we get in touch with you? An organization get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can visit our website, goforyours.com, just GOFORYOURS.com. And then the email is info@goforyours.com. And we also have a Go For Yours fund where we sponsor students who are following their dreams, who are entrepreneurs or creators and students who need financial resources. So right now we have $1,000 scholarship that we're giving away to a young person. So if you all know any young people that should apply, between the ages of 13 to 21, the applications are due on the 4th, so in 3 days.
Well, we'll have to get this up here fast so we can get the word out. What kind of things could they apply for to use that $1,000?
So the first person who applied was a student. He was he'll be the first African American to graduate from the Florence Academy of Art in Italy. So that was the first person to actually receive money from that fund. So someone who's like following their dream, who's motivated, preferably someone who's like a creator who has an idea for a business and needs funding for that. But if it's a student, we want to know, like, what is your plan to use these funds? Not just necessarily for books or tuition, but, you know, if you were to receive these funds, like, what is your plan for the future? Because we want to be able to mentor the student as well.
What's your plan for those, you know, since we're in this COVID time, they would obviously have to do virtual work or follow their dreams virtually. They might not be able to go to Florence to study. What's your plan for the COVID situation right now?
So that was just one student who was accepted and needed funding for school. But for COVID, you know, there's a lot of students who are home just being creative. And some of them are going back to school. A lot of college students are going back in the fall because they'll be in the classroom part-time and then be in their residence hall the other amount of time. So really right now, as far as support, we've done some panel discussions with students. And we had in March, I believe it was March or April, we had a global youth conference call with young people in the United States and London and Ghana, just to support students in this transition, because this, for a lot of, you know, Generation Z, this is their very first, I guess you could say, tragedy, right? So this is like the biggest thing that we've experienced, but we've also experienced other things as well where we can kind of roll with the punches a little bit more. So just supporting them, one, you know, emotionally and spiritually. Thankfully for things like Zoom, we can work with more students one-on-one and see how they're doing and check in with them.
I'm so excited that you mentioned Ghana. It pulls my heartstrings because I consider it to be one of my second homes. I do a lot of work in Africa, so we have lots to talk about offline. I want to go back to John, and then obviously, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said I definitely want to travel there.
Oh, you haven't been?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
My friend does a lot of work there too. He's built hospitals and buildings and stuff in Ghana. Yeah.
I've been there many times. We'll go together. We'll all go together. Beautiful country. It's a beautiful country. I want to go back to John, and then everyone, let's just open up this conversation between us as community leaders. Like, how can we, John, how can you as city council member, because you are getting voted in. My crystal ball was warmed up this morning, so I recharged the batteries, and it says John Erickson for city council.
Even better. Okay, great. I'm done. Okay, it was great. You know, we're done. As long as the crystal ball. No.
The crystal ball worked. So when, not if, when you get elected into that position, what would you want to do to inspire people to follow their passion? And I want everyone to be able to chime in, and this is free for all. Let's have a conversation. But I wanted to circle back with John.
Oh, this is something that really goes right to my heart. As an activist, as a person in spaces that, you know, from LGBTQ spaces to feminist spaces to standing in solidarity with the Black community as an ally to being there for our trans community, for all of these things that I do and try to embody. If I do anything right ever by being an elected official, it's by telling or inspiring one person to step up and say, I'm ready to lead. I'm ready to take that next step. I'm ready to run for this board, or I'm ready, you know what, I want to be appointed to that board or commission, or I want to be a firefighter. Valerie, I mean, God, I love it. I love your story. I mean, badass, kick-ass extraordinaire, everyone here. But if I do anything right, especially as a young Democrat in this race, you know, as a young person in this race, inspiring other people to know that, like, yes, you can run for office. Yes, you can hold these positions. Yes, you don't have to take no for an answer when someone tells you you're to this or you're to that. It's that change doesn't happen until you start pushing for the change that you need to see in the world. And the greatest leaders of our time, as you mentioned, starting off this amazing discussion with John Lewis, create that good trouble, right? Create the good trouble that we need in the world. No one asked John Lewis for, you know, John Lewis did not ask anyone for permission. Civil rights leaders did not ask anyone for permission. Women's rights leaders did not ask anyone for permission. LGBTQ leaders didn't. But look at the world in which we live in now. We've got a little bit of work to do on some levels still, as we all know. But if I do anything right as a leader, it's someone else running. It's someone else saying, I want to serve on that board or commission, or, you know, just knowing that change is possible. And people ask me what it takes to be an activist, what it takes to be a leader, and my answer is 2 words: show up. That's it. I mean, truly, I mean, it's showing up to a meeting, it's going to a march or rally, it's not being afraid to say yes. Also, it's really empowering to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything all the time. I have that same problem, as many of us, as Tess knows, because I do too much. But being an activist is about showing up and doing the work. And if you do that, if you know you can do that, and if I do anything by showing people that all it takes is for you to show up, then I've done my part in this world. And ultimately, you know, I'm running, and I tell this story. I tell the story when I'm in more intimate crowds, but like this. But I remember very vividly when I have 4 nieces and nephews. I have 2 nieces and I have 2 nephews from my beautiful sisters back home in Wisconsin. And I remember after the 2016 election, I was home for Christmas. I had just gotten asked to help with the Women's March here in Los Angeles, which became the Los Angeles March, became the largest march in the United States history in many ways. And so I got asked, I was starting to work and putting together programs. I mean, it was just crazy times over Christmas because we needed to come together. But I vividly remember my young niece, who, and that seems 4 years ago, literally looking at me going, Uncle John, where's the nice lady on the television? And I remember in that moment going, holy shit, I have a lot of work to do. And, you know, we cannot have our children growing up with this figure in the White House or this hate in the world. And it was at that moment that I said, I'm going to do everything I can in these 4 years, every single time, every ounce of energy I have to rabble rouse, to create good trouble, and to create change and be the leader. And it led me to realize I need to run for office to really help and push this. That's where I can make a lot of change. But I work for them. I do this work because I want my nieces and nephews to grow up and understand that they can be whoever or whatever they want. They can identify however they want. And that's ultimately very close to my heart because that's how I saw my grandmother growing up as a man, seeing her as a woman in very male-dominated, hegemonic, patriarchal spaces like the military. And Valerie, when you talk about the firefighting, and I mean, being a first responder, and you talk about ministry, my PhD is in religion, so I wanted to just really go into that one for a minute, right? Because you're right. But I grew up seeing a person that I knew was doing things that just seemed normal to me. Just seemed like everyone welcomed her into the room. It didn't matter if she was the only woman in the room. And then when you start breaking down the systematic barriers that stop that, you really see the work that we need to do. And she showed that to me. And I hope I show that to whoever else wants to join the cause or whoever I can help inspire along the way.
John, will you say that for me, you know, when you're stepping in, you're like, where do you start? A lot of times people have to remember that everybody can't be a chief. And so, and to be able to serve, you have to be the Indian a lot of times. You can't be concerned about a title or if anybody's going to give you any credit, because if you're worried about if you're going to get credit for it, if they're going to have your name on the billboard, if you're going to have the title, if you're going to be over somebody, then you can't be used as service, because people that are really truly being able to serve, I don't get a thank you letter for all the things that I've done, but when I see people later, they tell me that, and I didn't know that I impacted somebody or anything like that. So when you have a true service, it's not about if somebody's going to write my name on something or if I'm going to get something back. You can't be concerned about any of those things. You never know 10 years from now when somebody comes back and tell you that you spoke something into their life or what you said. You never know who's paying attention and listening. When I think about some of the things that I even put on Facebook, some of the inspiration things, and I say that I'm going to stop, I'm not going to post anything, and then I'll get a message or see somebody and they say, you know what? Every day I look forward to you posting something or saying something that is, I'm like, really? I was just about to stop. Or you posted a sermon, somebody's church service, and I look forward to that, or I needed that. And I'm just thinking, you never like it. You're even on my page, but people see that. But if you're looking for somebody to always give you something instant gratification when you're trying to serve other people, you don't always get that. I know my mother, it came from my grandmother who started all of the servicing. And then my mother was a special needs teacher for over 40 years here in Memphis. And she never left her classroom because she saw the need there. She could have been a principal. She could have been a director and all of those kind of things. And she never left the classroom because she was so compassionate about those kids until when she finally retired. If she didn't get out then, it would have been another 6 years because she would have got the kids at a certain age, and then she would have wanted to stay with them until they left her because she didn't ever entrust anybody with her. So growing up, people said, you're going to be a school teacher, you're going to be a school teacher. And I was just like, I'm not going into a classroom. I'm not going to deal with anybody's children. And what do? I'm around kids at all of these different mentoring organizations and different things and stuff because that's truly where my heart is and stuff, because it was instilled in me. And even to today, she's retired and her students still call her. Her students still, with families, they're married with children, and they still come back and they check on her just like some of my mentees, they check on me and stuff. But again, if you're looking to do service work, all the time you won't be, when you get elected judge, you'll have a title, but all the time that doesn't come into fruition sometimes. The biggest leaders and the biggest people that have helped so many, they're unknown.
I don't take away all my titles, truly. Like I tell anyone, I was like, I don't stay up till 4 a.m. writing questions for a consent workshop that we're doing on Monday because I'm the former president of the Hollywood chapter of the National Organization for Women. I don't do these things because of all of these things. I do them because it's what's right, and you said something, Valerie, that just struck my heart. It made the hair on my arm stand up a little bit. Is that I had a teacher just like you're talking about. Her name was Romaine Pavalio. She was our choir teacher, and she created this safe space for so many of us. I don't know, theater outcasts, probably gay kids, because she knew, because she was the music professor. And she literally waited for us to leave and graduate. She had this whole system set up. She had from 8th grade, she was our middle school music teacher. We all went into freshman year. She actually moved in, became our choir director in high school because she wanted to see her kids from 6th to 8th grade all go through and graduate. And when that last batch of kids was gone, she retired because she goes, I've done my job. I've gotten these kids. All of them are going to colleges. They're doing incredible things. She still talks to me to this day on Facebook, and I every time I see her, I just have the best memories of my world, safe memories of someone that looked at me and saw me before I saw me. And that's the role of leaders. That's the role of so many of us. And, you know, I wanted to be a teacher, and I love teaching still, and I'm in this other role now, but I can't wait to go back and teach, because there's so much there. And, you know, it's just, you put it beautifully, that we don't do, you know, as that, I always say, like, activists, like, if you actually are an activist, like, when you are talking to someone and they're like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, or all this stuff that they're saying, like, you know, if they're just kind of, you're like, mm-hmm. Or you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, when I met Tess, she was like, you know, we clicked right away, right? And we were like going back and forth on everything. And it's like, you know, because it's like this hidden, I don't know, connection that we have to each other.
Right. I know, Erika, you talked about dealing. It is heart-wrenching to deal with foster kids. And I didn't know there were so many kids in the foster care system until I started substitute teaching. Like I said, being a substitute, I could look on the outside. I could put it all in perspective, because I don't have report cards to do, and I don't have all these other things that the teacher has to do. So I could really learn about the kids, where sometimes teachers don't always get a chance to see the outside of what's really going on with a child. Some of them do and some of them don't and stuff. And so I didn't realize there's so many kids in the foster care system until you start dealing and dwelling into it, and you hear them have this sense of what they really want to happen. And it's like, your parents aren't coming back to get you. They don't even want you. Or you deal with foster care parents who they're just doing it for a check. Mm-hmm. They're sending that kid to school. It's like, come on, lady, the shirt costs $5. You can't get that child a clean shirt, but you're getting the money for that, and they're mistreating the kids. That's what my mom had a lot to deal with, being a school teacher and stuff, knowing that these people, they got these nice cars and nice homes, and they're getting these checks, and they're not even feeding the kids. They're not giving them the right clothes. They're mistreating them, and that is heart-wrenching, And what do? So do you call social services on them? Or do you leave them in that situation and stuff? It's very heart-wrenching when you're dealing with kids in foster care system. I had a baby that was in this youth program, and she was like a level 5 in Memphis. She was all the way from Indiana. And so here I am dealing with this young lady, and some of the stories that she would write, and she would write it to me in a letter, Michael. She would write it to me in a letter and give it to me. And one minute she wanted long hair down here, and then she cut all her hair, and then she said she wanted to be a male. Then she came back and was like, well, can you buy me a wig? I was like, but Leanne, you had hair down here, and you cut it and stuff. So to just kind of let them express themselves because they're in this foster care system, it's like, wow. I have a firefighter who, and now he has stage 4 cancer, and I hope he comes into fruition. He's writing a grant right now, Tess, to have, he wanted to host, he wanted to buy this hotel that was going to deal with sex trafficking people, and they were going to call him, and then he was going to house it with security and cameras and different things. And now he has stage 4 cancer, and so we don't know if of all of these housing things that he had put into place for the people that have timed out of foster care from 18, how to get them the transition housing, especially because they don't have any programs for young ladies that's in foster care who have children. And so he wanted to do that piece, and then he wanted to have a sex trafficking piece as well and stuff. And so I'm just praying that he's healed and that this money comes through. But of course, with all this COVID stuff, everything slowed down, that he gets this off and running before, either the cancer or this whole thing and stuff, because it's needed. It's needed. And until you get into these systems and see that there's so much that they drop them off at 18. Because I had a young lady that I dealt with that was that transition, that she was timing out of foster care system, who didn't want to be with her, her parents and stuff. And it's like, well, where do I go? But she still needed some guidance. And that's one of the biggest things. People think that you're 18, you're grown and gone. No, that's when they really need you, when they get to be 18, because they're lost. Because the society says that you're grown and you don't need any help.
Yeah, that's a very important time frame when they're opted out of the system. So to have that kind of support, I'd love to talk to you offline about that and see how we can maybe perhaps help your friend, because it sounds like a beautiful vision. Michael, I just wanted to ask you, and then I'm going to go over to Erika, and once you answer this question about, how do you feel that your work, I'm so grateful that you are doing the work with the kids in juvie and the at-risk kids. So how do you feel your work is magnifying in their lives and making a difference in their lives? And once you answer that, while Erika is answering that similar question, you can look in the question box to see if there's anybody that has a question.
Yes, I don't really know how it's affecting their lives. I know that, sometimes you plant a seed and you may not get a chance to witness the fruits that it's going to bear. But I've gotten some positive response about people saying, you know what, thank you for sharing that, or holding that vision. I think that, you guys are doing it. It's just answering the call. And one thing I really believe, and I think each one of you have said, is that being able to answer that call, it could be negative, but it's like turning lemon to lemonade, being able to see something. And Valerie, you've done it. Erika, you have too. John, you guys have been able to heed the call and then answer it. And I think that's what it's all about. Answer the call. And once, Course in Miracles say, there is either love or a call for love. So when you understand that, like, you know what? Either I'm calling for love, and because that angry kid or whatever, or either it's love. So sometimes what we're doing is answering the call. What John is doing is answering the call. Valerie answering the call. Erika answering the call. Tess, you're answering the call. That's what we're here to do, to answer the call for love.
One thing that I studied when I was in grad school is when the It Gets Better project really came out. And we were talking and looking at how LGBTQ youth was really dealing with bullying. And I asked the question, I said, well, what about the bullies? I said, there's some pain inside them that it's internalized homophobia. It's something's wrong in their house. Yeah. Maybe they don't have, there's so many, it's like when we talk about all these issues, we don't know. And so I actually got a grant from my institution to study bullying and actually the bullies. And so it's that type of leading with love, leading with compassion. Dealing with, we could talk all day about issues of foster care. My good friend Karen is a CASA here in Los Angeles County and deals with foster youth and has a foster youth that she mentors and does so much work with, and the systemic problems in that whole field is, I won't, we don't have 5 hours, but
I wish we did.
I wish we did, because it is an issue of children, of our youth, of our future, but we need more people that lead with love, that kind of go into these big situations and answer the call and say, well, how can I bring my heart, the best of me, to solving this problem? And everyone on this call is doing it. I would just like to.
John, I used to tell people, I said, either that you need to get involved, because either that youth is going to rob your loved one and kill them or do some harm to them, or you can intervene and plant a seed and help them to be better. So one way or the other, they're going to affect you, and this is our future. So either they're gonna rob, steal, and kill from you. So I care, and I look, because they used to say, Missy, how do you don't even know me? I said, well, baby, because either you're gonna rob, steal, and kill from somebody I love, or hurt me or something, or either you're gonna be the next whatever, because you're our next future generation. So I care about you. I truly care about you, because it's going to be one way or the other. So I would rather see you on the brighter end of the spectrum. So let me step into you now and plant a seed, or tell you something, or try to guide you. I don't know everything. Let me tell you about my downfalls. So it's my downfalls and what hurt me or helped me. If I could tell you my story, and that can make a change or a difference and make you think, then it's all good, because I don't want to see you the other route.
Valerie, you make a lot of sense. When we recognize that we're all connected, it changes everything. I do an exercise with experiential, where if one person fail, we all fail. If one person win, we all win. And when we get to that point, that we understand that we're all connected, and that you just don't get a chance to be silent or just walk away because you will be affected by that person because we're connected. We're one.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
I love that. Erica, I want to hear from you now.
Okay. So as far as working, I've been blessed to be able to work with a lot of students one-on-one because my foundation is so small. So I'm actually able to, well, I won't say so small, it's growing. So I'm able to see growth on a more intimate level. So it's really been a blessing to know that this foundation and this message has had an impact on so many young people. Like I've had young people who have decided to go back to school, or we've been able to help them get into school and just provide them with resources that they normally would not have if it weren't for the foundation. When I was an undergrad and studying health education, a lot of my professors would say, you know, well, if you can just impact one person, then you've had an impact. But for me, I'm always like, I don't want to impact just one person if I don't have to. So it's been a blessing to be able to work with so many young people on a one-on-one level, and young people who are able to say, you know, if it weren't for this foundation, I wouldn't be doing, you know, X, Y, and Z. There's a student from Chicago that we brought to Los Angeles for the Dream Experience, and we were able to help him get into school, into performing arts schools at AMDA. And he was able to get a scholarship, which is very hard at that school. But we were able to support him in that process. So it's been such a blessing just to see all of the young people who have taken this message and who have, you know, started their own empire. We also have Go For Yours brand ambassadors that I work with one-on-one, and we provide them with mentoring, and they help grow the foundation, and kind of, you know, we do think tanks. A lot of the programs that we do, we don't just create, we actually talk to those students to see what they need and pretty much cater to their needs. So it's been a blessing to be able to just see that impact on, you know, a more intimate level, because it's like family, as one of our students says, you know, it's not a foundation, it's a family.
I can't
Erica.
wait for you to get back in LA. Sorry, Michael.
Erica, we have a question for Erica.
Uh-huh.
Somebody wanted to know, you mentioned that Go For Yours has been around almost 10 years. They
Yeah.
want to know, they're curious if you are working on any project books, or are you just sticking to the Go For Yours?
Actually, I'm not. So I have Go For Yours and I have the foundation, and I'm doing a follow-up book called Don't Wait, Create, which actually shows you how to, so Go For Yours is more motivational, but Don't Wait, Create will show you how to, you know, carry your thought from idea to fruition. So it provides you with the steps, and there's actually a model that will help readers to track their progress. And then another project I'm working on that I'm very excited about, which is probably why I look like I haven't had any sleep, because I'm publishing a book that is, it's a book of funny dating stories told by men and women. So it's called All Good Just a Week Ago, and it's a book of stories to help you keep your head in the dating game. But the whole purpose of that book is to just have conversations that we normally don't have with each other, that get swept under the rug. So those are a few things I'm working on.
I love it. I can't wait for you to get back to LA.
Get a copy of that.
Okay.
Signed copy. We would like a
We
signed
all
copy.
probably have good stories to add to that compilation. You might have to do volume 2.
Very excited. So that should be hopefully by the end of next month. So and the final stages of editing for that. So
I can't wait for you to come back to LA. There's so many things that we'll be able to do, and to know that you're my neighbor is really exciting.
yeah.
And John, my first city that I lived in when I moved to LA was West Hollywood, and you're inspiring me just to move over the hill just so I can vote for you.
Come on back. You know.
Come back, because I mean we haven't even scratched the surface of all the depth that all of you bring to the table. Michael, are there any other questions that we want to get answered?
I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, I am so excited about having you all on this call today. It was episode 4 of the GWEN Talks Summer Special Series. I want to ask this question to all of you. Who is that person or persons who inspired you when you were younger? And how can you become that person? How can you answer the call? And how can you lead with love? So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to shout out to our charity spotlight this week is Beads of Courage. Our dear board member and dear friend of mine, Kate Snap, is one of the consultants on there. She was a former board member, but now she's a consultant. And you can go to beadsofcourage.org. And what they do is they provide innovative arts to medicine programs for children coping with serious illness for their families and clinicians who care for them. Join us next time. I planned this 4-part series, but I have a feeling there's a few other things brewing that we might even be continuing this since we're going to be in this Zoom world for a while. Thank you all and have a beautiful day from my house to yours. GWEN Talks.
And now, a Mind Over Matter Minute.